Story 1. My friends and I met for an evening meal around 7 p.m. We don't hang out often since we all have our priorities. At 11 p.m., we decided to wrap things up because we all have work in the morning. Suddenly, we realized that we probably won't hang out for months, possibly even a year. One of us is already married. So we decided to stay out since the night is still young. I got home at 4 a.m. and woke up at 6 a.m. for work. It was worth it. Story 2. I was working at a job I loathed but stayed because I was next in line for a huge promotion. The department head was dragging her feet about conducting interviews for the promotion. Finally, she, another department head, and human resources did the interviews. I was passed over for the position in my department that I had already been doing, just without the increase in pay and title. They picked the other department head's choice. It turns out he had filed a human resources complaint about something, and they promoted him to keep him from suing. My boss finally told me a week later that I didn't get the job. She was a real coward about it, despite the fact that I had saved her more than a few times. It was 1:17 p.m. on a Tuesday when she told me, and by 1:37 p.m., I had handed her my resignation letter, said my goodbyes to the coworkers I liked, and was out the door. At 2:15 p.m., I was home going through my mail, and a travel brochure was mixed in. I sorted through it, and 2 tour group specials caught my eye, one for Western Europe and one for Central Europe. I booked both, and a month later, I spent 6 weeks traveling around Europe with no job to come back to. It was the best decision ever because it totally changed my mindset about life, myself, and my career. A year later, I got a job at a company that I truly enjoy working for and have been so much happier since. Story 3. I can't say it was the best decision, but buying my first Inville motivated me to get into the hobby. I really needed a creative outlet to alleviate my frustrations and distract myself. I've been having a great time with it. I started last April and already have 12 knives and several other small projects. Story 4. Resigning from my high-paying job was the best decision I made, as I now have a business that provides me with immense freedom. Story 5. I applied for a job I didn't think I was qualified for. It offered double the salary of my previous position. Although it required a lot of experience, I only had my bachelor's degree and some relevant experience. I went for it and got the job. Now I am doing really well, traveling more often, and paying off my debt much faster. Story 6. When I entered my first truly toxic relationship, I was 23 years old, and I endured it for 2 years. I eventually grew tired of it, and when he left for work one day, I was gone by the time he returned. That was probably the best decision I made. Story 7. I quit my engineering job 6 months after graduating from university to teach English in Japan. I have always wanted to live in Japan, so when I saw the chance, I took it without any doubts. 10 years later, I am still here. I am now a bilingual engineer. Even better, I am a husband to my best friend and a father to the best child ever. Story 8. Most recently, last year I was thinking about taking my mom to the Gorge to see Dave Matthews. It was her favorite band of all time and possibly one of the most beautiful venues of all time. One night, I decided to buy tickets for 2 nights and for camping. I told her we were going, and we gathered all the camping supplies. That was in August of last year. She just passed away from cancer 2 weeks ago today, and I am so glad I was able to go and share that experience with her before she was gone. Her goal at the beginning of this year was to make it again this August. I'm sorry you weren't able to, Mom. You were the best. I love you. Story 9. A friend and I were headed to a bar to meet our friends. While waiting in line, they called us to say they were at a different bar that was much farther away. My friend and I decided to go to a place we like nearby, just the 2 of us, to enjoy ourselves. So we did. I got a woman's number that night. We've been together for 17 years and have 2 children. Story 10. Giving up on my dream of becoming a doctor turned out pretty well. I'll be financially independent much earlier, and I don't have to dedicate 10 years of my life to pure studying. I can still study without feeling compelled to do so. Story 11. A long time ago, I was rapidly burning out in graduate school and had a moment sitting on the beach in Santa Monica, thinking that the only thing going well in my life was my relationship with my girlfriend. She had just gotten a job in Austin, and I decided to join her to get my head on straight. I never looked back. We are married now, but I still chuckle when I recall explaining my lack of a plan beyond. I'm going with her, ride or die, to someone at a dinner party about 6 weeks later. It was a real moment of realization. Saying that out loud sounded a little crazy. Story 12. When I was 19 and in college, I met two Italian girls at a coffee shop in San Francisco. We hit it off, and after spending 2 days exploring the city together, they jokingly mentioned that I should visit them in Italy for a month. A few months later, they actually invited me. The plan was to start at a music festival in Gallipoli, then travel north by train to Bologna, stopping in every major city along the way. I barely knew them, but I packed my bags and spent the entire month of July traveling across Italy. They welcomed me like family, and many of the friends I made on that trip are still in my life today. Now, at 28, I am heading back to Italy this September for one of their weddings. It is amazing what a simple decision can lead to. Story 13. My boyfriend was a sweet, handsome guy I had been avoiding because he was too young, and I didn't entirely trust men or have much faith in love. I had a sudden realization that I wanted to be with him while I was drunk. He was sleeping upstairs at a party we were attending when I went in, woke him up, and asked if he minded me sleeping next to him and cuddling. We ended up spending the early morning until about midday chatting and cuddling in a friend's single bed. I avoided him a little for the next couple of weeks, but it made both of us realize that we were really into each other and wanted to give it a go. A cinema and food date a couple of weeks later cemented our connection, and it is the most loving, warm, mutually committed relationship I have ever had. I hope we last, but if we don't, he will be the standard for all future relationships. Story 14. My husband jokingly shows me a catamaran and says we should buy it. I agree, and we sell everything we have, take our dog, and go live on a boat. Then we sold the boat and got a recreational vehicle. We took fun jobs, and 2 years ago we got regular jobs and a house again, but we hate it. We are already planning the next adventure, and hopefully it will happen before the end of the year. It was scary quitting our jobs, selling our house, and leaving our friends and family. The scariest experiences are the most worthwhile. Take the leap and do the thing that scares you. Story 15. Marrying my husband while I was visiting him was the best decision I have ever made. He is from the United States, and I am from the United Kingdom. We make it work. Story 16. Going to the military recruiting station turned out to be a great career decision. I am still thankful I made that choice. It helped me pull myself and my family out of poverty and earn my college degree. Story 17. I bought a condo on a whim. It was the first place I had purchased, and I did not perform any due diligence. I walked into the place, and despite the stained walls, I wanted it. It turned out there was an injecting room at the end of the street, a drug den next door, and government housing surrounding it. During the final inspection, the police had apprehended 2 individuals out front, and they were lying on the grass. There was a tenant in the unit, and when she left, her 3 cats had urinated everywhere, leaving me with a bill of $30,000 to sort it all out. Then, a hospital was built at the end of the street, and the injecting room moved into that. The drug den was demolished, and the government housing was sold for development. Suddenly, my condo's price and rent increased, and it turned out to be a great investment that I bought and paid off because it was so affordable. So for a while, it seemed like one of the worst decisions of my life, and then it became one of the best. Story 18. Leaving Southern California and moving to Vancouver, Washington was the best decision I have ever made for myself and my wife. She gave me the final say, but she also wanted to go. There is no state income tax, a lower cost of living, nature everywhere, and the nicest people we have ever met. My health is better than it has ever been due to less stress and reduced drinking with old friends. In her career, my wife is making double what a medical social worker earns in California, and she is not treated poorly. We have met amazing friends here. There is so much good that I cannot imagine ever living full-time in Southern California again. Story 19. Marrying my friend with benefits. There was no dating and no boundaries like we had before. Our paths crossed several times over many years, and there has always been intense chemistry. We are sexually amazing together. However, he does not show me that I am anything more than a friend with benefits now. I am his wife and his life partner. I feel lonely and disrespected. He does not have time for me but is always looking at other women on his phone. I guess I should have realized I would always just be a casual partner. Story 20. I was visiting my ex-boyfriend to return his car after he returned from a deployment. We ended up reconnecting, and I never left. We decided to get married a month or two later. It will be 17 years this June. Story 21. There were unauthorized occupants living on 10 acres of land next door to us. The only way for them to access the land was by trespassing through our property. They were there for a few years, making our lives miserable and invading our privacy. They parked in our driveway during the winter months because they couldn't navigate up and down the hill in their old, non-four-wheel drive SUV. They never asked for permission to park. They just did it anyway. One of the individuals was a registered sex offender. The owner of the land they were occupying lived out of state and couldn't get them to leave. There was an old, run-down shack and several recreational vehicles on the property. At that moment, we decided to buy the land from the out-of-state owner, knowing we would face a struggle to remove the unauthorized occupants. We went to court and utilized a little-known law to get the judge to order them to leave within 24 hours. 3 hours later, the sheriff escorted them off the property. Story 22. I left my abusive ex-wife for my own happiness, and it has greatly benefited my children and me. Story 23. Forget it. Let's solo travel the world. I have never regretted any of my solo trips. If I had waited for people to get organized and go with me, I would have seen nothing. Story 24. I was feeling depressed due to the end of a difficult relationship and other factors. A friend suggested taking me to a party that someone was hosting that night. Long story short, I experienced love at first sight with that person, and we have been together for 10 years this summer. I'm glad I didn't listen to my thoughts. Story 25. I met a guy I wouldn't usually go for, as he is 10 years younger than me. We connected on a dating app, and after having a few drinks, I texted him around midnight, knowing he lived an hour away and wouldn't come over. However, he surprised me and did come. A little over a year later, we have a beautiful life together with 3 dogs. It was the best decision I made, even if it didn't seem smart at the moment. Story 26. I was nervous about applying for my current position, thinking I wasn't good enough and that I would have to leave my wife and kids for 3 days a week. Turns out they hired me, and I more than doubled my salary. Now I am earning even more from promotions and raises. I work fully remotely, at home with my wife and kids, and I love every moment of it. I'm considering trying again to see if I can increase my salary further. Story 27. Booking a last-minute trip to Italy on my own without my ex-girlfriend was delightful, beautiful, intoxicating, and lovely. It was her loss. Story 28. Telling Child Protective Services the whole truth and deciding that I wasn't going home from school that day was terrifying, but I know it saved my life. Story 29. I left a position as a team leader in a residential care home. In the past, I always ensured I had another job lined up before resigning. However, this place was in disarray, and I had enough savings to support myself for a few months comfortably. I found a new job just over a month later and am now amazed that I get paid to do what I love. Story 30. About a month ago, we decided to take the plunge and purchase a large ranch in a remote area, leaving behind our comfortable life in the city along the coast. It was a leap of faith, and I am so glad we made that choice because it truly was the best decision we ever made. Story 31. I was going through the early stages of what would become a divorce. To escape from the situation at home, I went to Los Angeles to visit a couple of friends. While hiking with a friend, we found a great spot overlooking Hollywood. My friend suggested, "Why don't you just move out here and stay with me?" So I did. Completely changed my life for the better. Story 32. I didn't want to go back to school for a master's degree. I was already an engineer at Intel, had an amazing girlfriend, an affordable apartment, and a dog. My manager explained that to earn a higher salary and advance my career, I needed to have a master's degree or more. Bills started piling up with inflation, and arguments occurred between my girlfriend and me. My dog had an accident, and I had to borrow money from my family to pay for his surgery. Then I knew I had to make a change, so I decided to pursue my master's degree. Now I own 2 houses with my wife, make 6 figures, and have 3 pets. It worked out for the best, and I encourage anyone to do the same. Story 33. A college buddy and I decided to ride down to Key West just for fun. He had no air conditioning in his car. That was a long, hot, boring drive. Took much longer than we thought, and we pretty much had to turn around as soon as we got there. Story 34. I agreed to move in with my cousin and his girlfriend because I was living alone in a studio apartment and they needed a 3rd roommate for their house. Here's a word of advice. If you're single, never move in with a couple. It was the worst mistake of my life. Story 35. I was approached by a girl who was interested in me. Even though we barely knew each other, she invited me to go out with her family to a remote location. Despite being a reclusive person, I agreed because I really liked her. It turned out to be the best night of my life, without a doubt. We talked and cuddled throughout the evening. I haven't experienced that same level of comfort or peace since. I still miss her every day, even 6 years later. Story 36. Sneaking out with my best friend. Without those nights, I would never have been able to deal with the challenges my mother caused. Story 37. Last year, I decided to go to the Final Four and watch Purdue. It turned out to be worth every penny I spent with my wife and 3 great friends who tagged along. We had a blast. Memories for a lifetime. Story 38. My best friend and I quit our jobs and moved to Chicago, which is about a 12-hour drive from our previous home in a college town. We had around $3,000 saved and had to share a studio apartment because it was all we could afford. When I moved here, I just wanted to make $30,000 a year. It was the best decision ever. I broke into the technology field and became a product manager, which transformed my life. That was 13 years ago. Story 39. I was kind of just lost with life and a Tinder match on a random Friday in September. We went skin dipping. It wasn't exactly the warmest weather here, but it was not unbearable. I said, forget it. And I guess she did too. I picked her up, drove us to a spot, and we went in. Things went well, and it turns out we got along really well. We were exclusive the whole time, but didn't actually choose to be official until a year later. I was so happy that I found her, and she took a huge chance on me after going through some difficult experiences prior. About 2 months after becoming official, she ended things, really leaving me shocked at a very bad time. She completely destroyed me and didn't even seem to understand how. So it was both the best decision and the worst. Story 40. I worked as a safety advisor in refinery and civil construction. I was informed that I wasn't spending enough time in the field or in the office, despite working unpaid overtime every day. They held a meeting and mentioned that I would be placed on a performance improvement plan, so I immediately submitted my resignation before they finished speaking. It was the best decision I ever made. Now I work as a community carer, and I love it. Story 41. I was a bedroom DJ in the mid to late 1990s. I never really performed publicly and pretty much stopped playing in 1999. Fast forward to 2018. I always followed what was happening in the techno scene in my city and decided to jump back in and give it a try. I had no contacts and nobody knew me. I always believed I had some talent and loved to play. With hard work, sending demos out, and encouraging myself to give it one last try, I ended up getting gigs at the best spots in town, including one after-hours club considered to be one of the best in the world. All of this happened within 15 months, including performances at after-hours clubs, raves, and gigs in other countries. After achieving all of that, I faded back into my regular life and no longer felt the urge to perform. I have no regrets. Story 42. I saw the perfect Christmas present for my dad, a Lego mosaic of the Beatles. It was fairly pricey, and I asked my siblings if they wanted to chip in together. They declined, and since I couldn't afford it by myself, I let it go. When the next Christmas rolled around, I still couldn't get it out of my head. I asked my siblings again, but they said no once more. By the third Christmas, the mosaic was out of production, but I found it online, decided to purchase it myself, and paid for the whole thing. Dad loved it. That turned out to be his last Christmas. The Lego mosaic still hangs in his office. Story 43. About 9 months ago, I told myself to meet a former coworker for dinner, despite having mixed feelings about her. I am so glad we did. The entire dinner led to us talking and texting nearly every day for a couple of months. During this time, I realized we had many similarities. In her, I saw the quiet confidence, intelligence, and talent that I wish I had cultivated earlier in life, instead of being so focused on my career, material possessions, and money. Although things didn't go well between us, it genuinely made me a better person. Story 44. I moved across the country. I had always lived in or within an hour of New York City, and I wanted a drastic change. I love it out here on the West Coast. Story 45. Randomly deciding in the middle of a workday to book a solo trip to South Korea completely changed my mindset and made me much more confident in my abilities. Story 46. I quit my job to move across the country and become a sports photographer. It has created an exciting new life. Story 47. Honestly, I don't mean to be negative, but every moment of impulsive decision-making I've ever had has failed spectacularly. It's like trying to perform a daring motorcycle jump over a car and somehow getting catapulted outside of Earth's atmosphere. It's comically unfortunate and simply embarrassing, leaving you to wonder why the attempt was made in the first place. Story 48. I randomly texted a guy I found cute to see if he wanted to walk around town one night. He is now my boyfriend and my favorite person in the world. Story 49. I have three, I suppose. First, I bought a house with my long-term girlfriend in our early 20s. 6 years later, we are now married with around $300,000 in equity. Second, a close family member passed away, and I had to shut down our family business. I lost my career. It was absolutely devastating and affected me for a while. It took a year and a half to come to terms with the loss before my wife and I decided we needed some joy in our lives. It was time to have a baby. It took a few months of trying until we finally got pregnant. Third, at that moment, I realized I needed to take a leap and try to earn more money for our family. I knew I needed to start my own business. With very little money and a pregnant but very supportive wife, I did just that. I was terrified. It is now approaching 1 year in business. I would say it has been quite successful so far and fulfilling too. Hopefully, my year-end results will show a profit. I am excited about what the next year has in store. Most of my decisive moments have brought me the most scary yet rewarding experiences of my life. Story 50. I met a girl online who was in another country at the time. We talked for a few months while I was looking for work. She gave my resume to her boss and I interviewed with them. They were impressed with me. They wanted to fly me out to meet them in that country, and I could also meet this girl in person for the first time. I decided to take a week off work, flew out, and met the lovely woman. They wanted to hire me, but the salary was too low to live comfortably, so I declined it. 3 years later, I'm in my home country with the woman I met online after traversing the world for her. If I had not made that decision, I don't think we would be married. Story 51. My girlfriend became pregnant unexpectedly before either of us wanted children. We discussed our options and ultimately decided to embrace the situation. I am now an incredibly proud father of 2 boys. Story 52. I messaged a guy on Plenty of Fish with some music recommendations. I was not expecting to chat or go on a date, just a friendly, "Hey, you like this band? Try this band," sort of message. He kept showing up in my matches, and I thought I should offer a couple of band choices based on his listed preferences. After about 3 weeks, I finally gathered the courage to message him. We've been married for 14 years now. Story 53. I was emotionally devastated by a girl I was talking to. I got on a bus and decided to write to my actual crush, whom I had never talked to before. I am now married to her. Story 54. Sneaking into a huge abandoned mall to film for school was exciting until a loud alarm went off. We heard security driving around in golf carts. As teenagers, it was frightening. Story 55. A few years ago, I started to spend time with this guy. On Valentine's Day, he asked me out and I said no. He asked me out every day until 5 days later. I finally agreed and said yes. I am now engaged to this man, and he is the love of my life. Story 56. I quit my job and have been unemployed for almost a year now. I am not sure if I'm depressed or happy, but I'm living in peace. Story 57. I stumbled into a threesome without any input of my own. I wasn't technically with my soon-to-be girlfriend at the time, as we hadn't said we were exclusive or dating. I was at a friend's house for a hot tub party for his birthday. Long story short, witching hour rolls around, and all that's left is me, my friend, a girl we knew from high school, and her girlfriend. During the bubbles and jets, the girlfriend starts getting handsy up my board shorts. This was a pretty bizarre moment for me, especially since I'm not exactly the kind of guy who gets a handjob in a crowded spa, not to mention that I had been led to believe she was a lesbian. Fast forward to leaving time. While my friend and the girl were cleaning up and calling a taxi, the girlfriend and I were drying off just out of view in the pool area. She threw her hand down my pants and started massaging me while simultaneously exploring my throat with her tongue. Having been inexperienced in such situations, I just went with it. A minute later, they left, and I didn't think much of it for a fortnight. I then received a text from a number I didn't recognize, and it appeared that my friend had passed my number to the girlfriend. They invited me over for drinks and a movie night. I thought it would be fun, as I had a great time with the group and wouldn't say no to another get-together. The night of the party came, and I arrived already 2 cans of high-alcohol beer deep on the drive over, as I used to drink heavily before events to deal with social anxiety. I immediately realized something was off when it was just the 3 of us, and I had arrived fashionably late. They brushed it off as people being late, so we started the movie. Half a bottle of whiskey and my remaining 2 cans later, we were halfway through the movie, and no one else had shown up. At that point, I was too wobbly for it to bother me, so I took no notice. Around this time, the girl from school disappeared into their bedroom, and no sooner had the door shut than the girlfriend was straddling me, again with her hand on me and her tongue down my throat. I started to feel apprehensive since, in the fortnight since the spa, my girlfriend and I had begun to get serious. I excused myself to go outside for a quick moment to collect my thoughts. I made the decision to stop drinking, finish the movie, and hopefully sober up enough to leave shortly thereafter. Upon re-entering, I realized I was alone in the house, so I started packing up my things, like my pipe, weed, and remaining whiskey. As I was packing, the bedroom door opened, and the girlfriend's head popped around the corner, asking if I could come in and help with something. I thought there was no harm, so I agreed to help. She disappeared back behind the door as I made my way to the room. I opened the door and turned into the room to find them both completely naked in bed with the covers thrown back. I remembered I had made the decision to leave less than 10 minutes prior to avoid perceived infidelity with my soon-to-be exclusive girlfriend. But 2 naked girls, I am only human. 45 minutes of one-sided and confusing intimacy later, during which it seemed only the girlfriend was actually into it, while the friend was just accommodating her. I slipped away into the night like a rock star on a motorcycle. The following day, I met up with my girlfriend and had the let's be exclusive talk. No regrets. Story 58. I am pursuing a degree in aeronautical engineering this year, which has limited opportunities in my country, India. I hope to return here. Story 59. I got into a limousine with a man I met in a casino in Portugal. He had asked my advice on a blackjack hand, and it was an obvious hit, which I told him. He won and said he wanted to buy me a drink. To cut to the end, he was Portugal's representative to the FIFA during the earlier days of FIFA corruption. I returned to the hotel and asked the front desk for a wake-up call at 7:30. She told me, "Sir, that's in 20 minutes. Story 60. Having a threesome while drunk with one of our close friends was a mistake. I should have listened when people said that threesomes are a bad idea. It literally ended my 10-year marriage. It wasn't planned. It just happened, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. The experience wasn't bad. In fact, it was good, but it exposed the flaws in our relationship and the lack of intimacy. I miss him with every fragment of my being. It was the worst decision of my life. I know the relationship was a mess, but I just don't think I'll ever find a love like that again. Story 61. I decided to skip my graduation ceremony to extend my holidays and trek to Annapurna Base Camp. It was the best decision of my life. Story 62. My ex and I had different views of our future, and we kept sweeping that under the rug, pretending we found compromise. One day, we ordered takeout and planned to start a new series. I went to the bedroom to take out my contacts and put on my glasses. Once the contacts were out, I started crying. I returned to the living room, and my ex asked what was wrong. I said, "It's just not working, is it?" He replied, "Let's not talk about this now." But I insisted, "No, let's do this." 20 minutes later, I took off my engagement ring and moved out the next morning into my own place close to my family. I reconnected with an old crush across the Atlantic. I live in Scotland now, married to the right man for me. I am so proud of myself for not shying away that day. I knew the moment I took the ring off my finger that my life would be beautiful if I was living true to myself. Story 63. In 2003, I was made redundant and was in my redundancy period when I applied for a job as works manager for a new oilfield services company setting up in Singapore. They had an office in Scotland, so they flew me from Dubai to Aberdeen for an interview. The interviewing manager told me I was his first choice for the position and that they would be in touch as soon as they received approval from the company owner back in Texas. Time was running out on my redundancy, and if I did not secure another position within a few weeks, I would have to pack up my possessions and family and move back to Scotland. The company finally contacted me to inform me that the owner had rejected my application and decided to put a friend in the position instead. Fortunately, I was also in talks with another company for a role as resident engineer for their facility in Tehran, Iran, so I reluctantly decided to accept this position. I had only been in this role for 6 weeks when the previous company contacted me to say the friend did not work out, and they were looking to replace him with me. Out of loyalty, I chose not to accept the Singapore position and stayed in Tehran. This was a huge mistake. I regretted this decision every day for the next 14 months, as working in Tehran was a nightmare. The Iranian owners of the company clearly did not want a non-Iranian in charge of their workshops and did everything they could to make my life as difficult as possible. Story 64. College roommate and friend, now best friend. Are you trying to move to a state 1,800 miles away after graduation? Me, yes. I ended up moving in with 3 other friends, and many more friends moved after we settled in. Looking back, it was the peak of life and set me up for where I am today. 15 years later, I moved another 3,500 miles west with my best friend, and we are still neighbors. Story 65. I went alone to a bar in a new city I decided to explore. I was constantly moving back and forth between the hotel exit and my room but chose to step out of my comfort zone. I talked with everyone there and met a group of Norwegian guys, one of whom was from my hometown. I stayed with them until 8 a.m., exploring different bars and clubs. There was drama and hookups, and I even had my first one-night stand. I smiled the entire day after. I would have missed this amazing night if I had decided to stay in my room at 9 p.m. Story 66. I just started a new business and got engaged. 3 months later, COVID-19 began. 6 months in, I was unmarried, had a new business, and a global pandemic was raging. We bought a house. The world was in turmoil, and all my friends were waiting for the housing market to crash so they could get a good deal. I decided to go for it. I secured a mortgage at 2.65%, and the house has increased in value by almost 30% in 5 years. Exciting. Story 67. I showed up for a charter bus in Las Vegas to go to Coachella in 2001, but the bus never arrived to pick anyone up. An older couple, maybe only 30 years old, allowed me and another person to hitch a ride with them in a car they had rented. We explained our situation and were let into the event without tickets. It was just a one-day event in 2001, and we still arrived pretty early because they were experienced at renting cars in Las Vegas, so it was not a problem. I received a refund later and ended up attending my first Coachella essentially for free. Story 68. I applied for a job to teach English in Japan, but the company went bankrupt and did not offer me a position. I was sad and uncertain about my future. At the time, I had a bachelor's degree and was working as a bartender and waitress. Then, out of the blue, on my way to my waitressing job, I received a phone call asking if I would be willing to teach in Korea. I knew nothing about the country or its culture, but I decided to go for it. A month later, I moved to Korea and stayed for 3 years. I am still teaching internationally 15 years later. It was the best decision I ever made. Story 69. Getting into a relationship with my close friend was unexpected. We met at the university and were in the same class. We spent a lot of time together and I viewed him as a brother. However, as we approached our final year, feelings began to develop. He confessed his feelings, and we decided to explore our connection. As a result, we have been in a relationship for 5 years and have been happily married for 5 months. Story 70. I sold my car and my house, putting all my savings into a business I had dreamed of for years. My wife left me and took the children with her because she didn't believe in me. She thought it was a reckless move and that I would fail. She was right. The business never took off, and I had to sleep on couches and be homeless for over a year while working in retail before I saved enough money to get my own place again. Story 71. I recently got out of an abusive relationship and was still dealing with the aftermath when a man approached me randomly at a karaoke bar and started chatting with me. He asked for my number and sent me a text the following day. I was honest and told him about my situation, explaining that I was not looking for a relationship. He was respectful and said he would still like to get to know me, without any pressure for it to turn into anything. I was terrified but decided to go on a date with him. I tried to push him away due to my past experiences, but he turned out to be the most patient and caring person I have ever had the privilege of knowing. That was 4 years ago, and he has helped me work through everything and has been there with me during my darkest times. I just know I am going to marry him one day. It was the best decision of my life. Story 72. I matched with a cute guy on Tinder while I was in his city for one night for work. He invited me to dinner, and I thought, why not? Even though I had a big pitch meeting at 9 a.m. the next day. Now I am married to that guy. Story 73. Resigning from my corporate job and ending a 6-year relationship in the same week to focus on my health and personal relationships was a significant decision. If I hadn't made these changes, I wouldn't have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, healed many of my relationships, and met my current girlfriend. Life looks completely different from what I had planned, but I am shaping it into the kind of life that makes me happy to wake up to. Story 74. I often play amateur visual novel games. Some are amazing, but they are always almost perfect, but not quite. There is also a lot of parody, but never around the subjects I want. Maybe I could try making my own game. Sounds crazy, but I need a hobby during the COVID pandemic. It's the best decision ever. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Try your luck. Doubt kills more dreams every day than failure ever will. I invested $1,000 into it, and the game is progressing with a comfortable $200 per month on Patreon covering the expenses now. It's still a small amateur game. I'm not the new Mario Kart, so don't worry. But it feels great to see yourself accomplishing what you wish others had done. Even if you often only understand why no one else did it either, it's not always easy. It's an eye-opening experience. Story 75. I have trouble opening up to my friends. I let them know I'm happy they are in my life and love spending time with them. It seems like stimulants are the only thing that allows me to express my emotions. I don't know why that is. When I'm sober, I'm emotionally distant. I have experimented with some intense substances, and my friends told me that was the first time they felt I was able to express myself and let them know how I feel. Story 76. Voting for Bob Barr in 2008 has significantly changed my life. Whether it has been for the worse or better, I really have no way of knowing, but I have greatly suffered as a result. Story 77. I invited my relatives to spend Christmas at our home. None of my family wanted to celebrate with us last year, and we had just welcomed our son 2 months earlier, marking his first Christmas. I have also lost my father in 2008 and my mother in 2020. I had a realization that we should celebrate Christmas at Disneyland, complete with hotel accommodations. It was worth every penny. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.